This is Breaking the News Plus on this Monday night. I'm Jana Shortle. We're going to have the same guest tonight as we had Friday night because we got to talk about what happened at those political conventions, those state party conventions. My friend Amy Fredericksen, a Republican strategist, is back with us tonight. Friday, Amy, we talked about what we thought would happen or what you thought would happen, and now we know what did happen. The Republican convention over the weekend in Duluth, a couple of surprises. The Republicans did not endorse House Speaker Lisa Dameth as their gubernatorial candidate. I can see you shaking your head. We'll get there. The Republicans did not endorse. They did not endorse the people that they thought they were going to endorse. Michelle Tafoya, they endorsed Adam Schwarzy. Why?
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about the DFL conventions. How about this DFL convention?
You're a Republican strategist. We'll get to them last because it wasn't very exciting. Footnotes. The Democrats endorsed Amy Klobuchar. They had a small argument over glow sticks. That's it. That's the end.
That was really, it was the end. Okay. So, I mean, there's a lot going on here, right? So first of all, Republicans just have this, especially not even Republican convention going, deeply involved insiders don't like anyone apparently who has served in office. And I understand from I'm not a big fan of people who have been there for 40 years and they have all this power and they have all this say. And I think that you should move over and give other people a chance. But Lisa Dameth is not one of those people. Lisa has not been in the legislature, but a few cycles. She has had a meteoric rise. She comes from this, Cold Spring, Minnesota, served on the school board. She is grassroots Republican, conservative mom who just stepped up and ran for office and it became the Speaker of the House. Her resume is excellent. It's small business. It is exactly what you want. She has demonstrated that she can raise money. She's a great, a spokesperson for the party. And Kendall Qualls, who seems like a nice guy, has run, this will be his third time. He's not done well, didn't get the endorsement last time, lost in Congressional 3. At some point, we have to stop doing the same thing over and over if we want to have a seat at the table. And so that's my frustration. I don't come at this like against Kendall. I come at this as, I want to win. It's been 20 years as a Republican. I want two viable parties. And we are becoming quickly just a also-ran party, a party that will never actually be in power. And you can have all the purity tests you want at a convention, but if you aren't at the table, it doesn't matter. And that's what we've got. It's very frustrating to me, Jana.
Speaker Dameth had said prior to the convention, early as she declared her candidacy, that she would abide by the endorsement. Do you think that she should change her mind and run in the primary anyway?
I think that 1,700 people at the convention are going to have some feels about that. And half of them would be happy that she's running. That's how I feel. I said earlier that this is, when you have such a small group of people deciding for literally tens of thousands of Republicans like me, who I actually was a delegate, elected as a delegate, but couldn't make the Saturday before the Saturday before the Saturday to become a state delegate. And so I wasn't attending. But I want to have a voice in this. I want to have a say, and that's democracy. What happens, with the endorsement, that's great. That's a recommendation. It's not a coronation, nor should it be. And so I think there's going to be a governor's primary because Mike Lindell is running anyway against Kendall Qualls, and there's going to be a U.S. Senate primary. And I think anybody who wants to run in the primary as a Republican should run.
Yeah, and we aren't really in the time where, yes, Speaker Dameth has said she wouldn't abide by the endorsement. There are a lot of people that wanted to see Dameth come out with it, and Qualls won it per the vote count at the convention, and that's fine. But to the
on
voters,
the 10th ballot, after she was up for the first five,
And you mentioned something on Friday that it is worth noting. Minnesota has never elected a woman to be the governor in this state. The Democrats have put up their candidate, and she is a woman, Amy Klobuchar. You wanted to see Lisa Dameth as a woman. That would have been nice. But I want to be clear, is your support of Lisa Dameth on her credentials as a politician, that's bigger than her gender?
1000%. Like everything I talked about, like her resume, she stands alone. Tell me how Kendall Qualls is more qualified. He's not. I defy you to show me that. You can't. So then are you voting? So then why are you voting for Kendall only, right? And then let's, I know we're going to get to the U.S. Senate race, but let's talk about the resume of Michelle Tafoya. Like super overqualified that she is as well. I feel like it's that old Ginger Rogers saying, right? Like Ginger Rogers never got the credit, but she did everything that he did, but backwards and in high heels. I just feel like, when is it going to be enough for a woman to just step up? And also, by the way, it would give us a slight edge. Poll after poll shows that you can get a few points edge with a female candidate, particularly as a female Republican. Why wouldn't we give ourselves every possible advantage that we could, all things equal? If you believe that Kendall Qualls and Lisa Dameth are absolutely equal in their resumes, why not give yourself a little edge? I don't understand why you wouldn't.
If you were advising Speaker Dameth, who has not filed yet, has remained quiet today, hasn't answered the question publicly that I've seen that she will continue her run, would you advise her to keep going, and how would you do that?
Well, I would advise her to talk to her husband and her family and make sure that they're okay with that, because running is very personal and it can be very hard. And a primary is very interpersonal. Like, right, we're going to see a lot between the DFL in the U.S. Senate race. That's going to be a battle. The inter-party things are often tougher. So I would first tell her it isn't going to be an easy path. I'm not.
Yeah, it's going to be expensive and ugly.
And bruising. Here's what I'll also say. My first race, I had a primary. I got the endorsement after 10 ballots. A very well-known county commissioner ran against me. And I hated it at the time, but it actually made me a better candidate. It forced me to get out there. It gave me good press. And so in the end, what I really didn't like in that hard primary was a really good thing for my candidacy. And I would also tell her that. And then I would say, yeah, just get in the primary. Nobody understands the endorsing process super well, and they just want to vote for the person that they like. So get in.
The Minnesota voters really kind of wake up to the endorsement, the majority of them, because we've talked about this on both the Democratic side and the Republican side. These are the super plugged in people that go to these conventions and make this kind of a decision. And at a time when Americans, Minnesotans, trust in the process, whatever the process is of anything, is at its lowest level, I think people just want to have their vote be counted, their vote be heard. And it's pick Kendall Qualls, pick Mike Lindell, pick Lisa Dameth, but that they get to pick.
But they get to pick in a process that everyone understands. It's very simple. You go, you've registered to vote, or you register in person and you cast your ballot for one of those three. We all understand that process. Ask 98% of Minnesotans how you become a delegate to the state convention. I promise you, they have no idea. Ask 98% of Minnesota GOP how you get to be a delegate. They would have no clue how to make that happen. And that's not democracy. That's great. That's the party insiders, and they can make a recommendation, but that's not democracy.
And I have to ask you about a sensitive topic that's being talked about not just in Minnesota, but all over the country today. At the Republican convention, early on Saturday, a delegate asked for a moment of silence for Derek Chauvin, the former police officer from the city of Minneapolis, convicted both in state and federal court of the murder of George Floyd. When you read about that, heard about that, what was your reaction for that happening at the convention?
Well, my first reaction was, why? It's 2026. And a couple things that struck me as, like, you're talking about something that has now been settled. He has been convicted in a court of law. And we're and also, by the way, moments of silence are usually reserved for high ranking or well thought of individuals that have passed away. So it didn't make any sense to me. Two, you're bringing up an issue that is incredibly difficult and sensitive, and three, like in a year when Republicans need to be talking about three things: fraud, fraud, and fraud. The convention and the story coming out of the convention, besides sort of the pomp and circumstance around the election or around the votes and who got the endorsement, is about Chauvin and George Floyd. Is that the message that we want? Even like whatever you think about it, what is the point of that? And what a missed opportunity for Republicans who are going to be going into a tough election year, given the economy, to message on the one issue that actually could turn things around for them. And that's fraud and theft of taxpayer dollars. And I don't know, that's like, I heard it from some elected officials, but that was not the message that came out of the convention.
And you've talked to, I'm sure, many insiders within the party going back to Dameth not getting the endorsement. What's the reason? Why did people pick Qualls over her in that 10th and final ballot? What did she lack in those delegates' minds that Qualls has that she doesn't?
Right. There was none of that, right? What happened is there was three people that were getting the votes. Lisa was getting the most votes. Kendall was getting the second most votes, and Mike Lindell was getting the third, and a distant third, but like 300 to 400, enough of a number. And then what happens with this convention is, as you don't reach certain thresholds, right? So like, let's say you and I ran, Jana, and you got 2% and I got 4% of the vote. Well, at some point, anybody with 2% has to drop off the ballot. And then presumably their votes, that even if it's a small amount, goes to the next person. And then at some point, everybody with 5% or less has to drop off. So then I have to drop off the ballot. And then my votes go somewhere else. At some point, you have to get it down to two people. And that's what happened. Mike Lindell reached the threshold where he was dropping. He dropped out and he said, go with your votes to Kendall Qualls. And his folks, that's what they did. And his argument was that he's a political outsider, which again, I've already covered. I don't understand what that means to people. I think it means something different to everybody sitting in that room. And that's what happened. But I haven't heard a single person make an argument to me that makes any sense on why Lisa Dameth wasn't the choice this year. She was.
And that's an important thing for people that don't know about the convention. It comes into this mathematical thing. And when Lindell has to go away, his 200 votes, he takes them and he puts them in somebody's pot. He puts them in Qualls' pot. That's what puts Qualls over the edge. It's not like some argument was made politically or policy made that said, actually, he's the better guy. It's just a number.
No. And little things will shift, right? Like maybe somebody goes negative first, and that can hurt you a little bit. And I heard some of that went on, right? Like there wasn't nothing, there were things that you can do, but in the middle of a convention, things get heated. But in this case, that was really the deciding factor. And then there's sort of a momentum because people want to get out of there. It's a beautiful Saturday. You want to get home. And so then people just start, peeling off or leaving. There was originally, I think, close to 2,000 people. In the end, it was 1,700 and some that voted on the final ballot. People just start to leave.
Well, Amy Fredericksen, we will know probably by end of business day tomorrow if Speaker Dameth stays in this race or leaves this race. If you had to bet, what would you say she does?
Gosh, I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like she might not run, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. She's shown me that she's got a strong sense of herself and a strong backbone, and that should be enough for her to say, look, I jumped in this race for a reason, and I'm going to see it through to the primary and hopefully the general election.
All right, well, we'll see what tomorrow brings, if Damith is in or if she is out. Amy Fredericksen, thanks for following up with us after these conventions. We appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. I'm Jana Shortle for Breaking the News Plus. We'll see you next time.